everyone. Boy, these seminars are just going by so quickly this morning. You know, I've had a chance to sit and listen to everyone so far, and I think I've picked up a tip or two from all of them. It's really been informative, and we're so appreciative of everyone that's here at this first annual Canadian Ice Fishing Expo and coming out to the legend stage here to listen to these experienced ice anglers. We're really appreciative of the fact that you're sticking around and listening to them. Next up, we have Sebastian Roy. So Sebastian is a local ice fishing stick from the top end of the lake. He's fished all over Lake Simcoe, but he loves fishing right here in Simcoe County. He's really specialized in the cold water species. And when we think of cold water species in Lake Simcoe, primarily we're looking at lake trout and whitefish. And you'll learn a lot about these two prime species in Lake Simcoe from Sebastian's talk. He has a real knack of figuring out the seasonal patterns within the context of a winter and their movements during the course of a winter season. So that, I hope, in and of itself is worthwhile staying. And as an added bonus, Sebastian's really put one species that's near and dear to my heart on the map here in Lake Simcoe, and that's the lowly burbot. So burbot are cold water species as well, same habitat requirements as lake trout and whitefish, the same requirements for cold, clean water. They were maligned for many, many years in Lake Simcoe, but with guys like Sebastian promoting what a tremendous species they really are, more and more people are putting burbot on their bucket list. And Sebastian did that last year and made news all over Ontario and throughout most of Canada when he caught the pending Ontario record burbot. That was almost 18 pounds. 17.95, I think. Yep. Yeah. So a monster burbot. The real cool deal was that he got it all on video, from catching it to the verification process, the whole deal. Sebastian's videos are some of the best you'll see online under Seabass Outdoors, I guess. Yep. And if you haven't checked that YouTube channel by now, I urge you to, for some real high quality stuff. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Sebastian, and I hope you enjoy his talk, learn a lot, and stick around. He's got some prizes as well, and we'll take questions probably later on after his seminar. So thanks very much, and here we go, Sebastian.
Thanks, Will. Thank you very much. All right, guys, I don't do this often as most guys. Will is very experienced in doing seminars like this. I'm mostly used to do it in front of camera, solo. Nobody's watching me. So just bear with me at the beginning. I'll unthaw a little bit, and it'll get better. As Will mentioned, I got lucky catching that burbot. I had never caught one prior to that day. I showed up with Steve, who just presented. I said, Steve, I got some lake trout on the shoal. You got to come out with me. Steve came out with me. We went to the shoal. It was open water. 2 days ago, we were catching lake trout. So it's pure luck. We turned around. I said, I've been dying to try this shoal. It's been on my mind for 2 years. So we showed up, and we caught that burbot within 30 minutes. I caught the small one. First one, I didn't even know they were on Lake Simcoe. We released it. You don't see it in the video. Steve has it on video. And about 10 minutes later, I don't know who's seen the video here. Raise your hands. Okay. Who's following me on YouTube and Instagram? Okay. So we caught that fish, and I catch a 5-pound lake trout, I get excited. I catch a 1-pound perch, I get excited. I'm a little kid. I love fishing. So when I saw that fish, there's a few guys that I caught a burbot that posted pictures online, and when I saw that fish, me and Steve knew what the record was. So when I saw that fish, I knew right away. So it's a very good experience. I got the mount now in my house. I just got it back 2 weeks ago, and every time I walk in the house, I see it, how big it is, and it's definitely going to get broken. If not this year, next year. The burbots out there right now, they're on fire. So I'll go through my presentation. At any time, if you got a questions, raise your hand. Best questions are gonna get prizes. I got prizes here from companies that are supporting me, so don't be shy. So today we're gonna talk about secret patterns of Lake Simcoe. And I say secret, everybody thinks we have secrets. They see the video, they think we use a secret bait, secret spot. I go fish community holes, the same that you guys are fishing. So there's no secret. I'm gonna show you everything. You wanna see what's in my tackle box? It's behind here, we'll watch it. So what's a pattern? A lot of people are like, what is a pattern? Well, for me, I'm a bass fisherman. I do a lot of tournament. A pattern is establishing a pattern as to what the fish are feeding on. If you're out there and you're like, I'm hungry, it's 12 o'clock, it's lunchtime, let's go eat. I go to McDonald's, right? What's on the menu? Oh. What's on the menu? I go to McDonald's, I go to Burger King. You know, you guys can see it, I've grown over the years. The fish, they're different. You know, if you were to live in the woods in the spring, you'd be eating berries, you'd be eating vegetable. In the summer, you'd try to catch rabbit, you'd catch what's in season. So establishing a pattern, you know that on Lake Simcoe, there's lake herring, rainbow smelts, gobies, and perch. For the lake trout, the whitefish will forage on the rainbow smelts, they're a bit smaller, on the gobies. So establishing a pattern, you gotta know what's in season. So for me, first ice, I'm gonna go in Kempenfeld, where they're deep. And if the lake trouts that I catch when they're deep, let's say 120 feet, I know they're feeding on herring. That means they're feeding up, they're always looking up, they're suspended, they're looking for schools of herring. Later during the season, they tend to hang around shoals. So if I go around shoals, I'm gonna have a goby pattern, a perch pattern, more of a bottom pattern. So establishing that pattern before you go out, optimize your percentage of catching or of catch ratio. You know, when I fish bass tournaments, I go out there, Lake Simcoe, I don't try to catch the big fish. You gotta catch 5 big fish, right? So I go out there and I try to bring my percentage of catching 5 big ones. What's gonna make them catch 5 big ones? So for example, you got those lake trout eating herring. You're out there in 120 feet of water, and the question I get is, are you fishing bottom, or are you fishing on top? If I fish in 120 feet of water, I'll fish one rod, and I'll fish it suspended. Dead smack in the middle. So if I'm in 120 feet of water, I'll fish it at 60, I'll jig it once in a while, I'll go see them bottom, but most of the time, it's dead stick at 60. Those lake trout, early ice season, they're roaming in the lake, they're looking for those schools of herring. Once they see your herring, or your bait that imitates a herring, they'll come up, I call them risers or chaser, and they'll come and eat them. So that's establishing a pattern. So, you know, first ice, you're trying to imitate herring. They're chasing those schools of herring, they're just done spawning, they're trying to replenish. So what's on the menu? We've talked about it, we got lake herring, rainbow smelt, perch, and goby. They'll even eat sunfish if they can, those lake trout. Oh, we're stuck here. Oh, there you go. So my favorite patterns, what is Seabass using out there is, you know, where do you get those baits? I get those baits right here. Through Note Outfitters has all the baits I'm carrying. He's carrying Realis Duos, the lipless, as you can see up there. That bait's put a lot of fish, the lipless, the 3 baits on the bottom left, that bait's has put a lot of fish for me on the ice last year, including whitefish. I use that big of a bait to catch whitefish when I go shallow. I don't swap and go to a smaller bait. Who's heard of Falcor here, the tube? The famous tube. A lot of guys are trying to ask me, where do you get that tube? It's discontinued. The last one is right here. It's tied on, that's my last one. So I messaged my buddy Peter Savoya from Set the Hook. I said, buddy, you gotta make some white tubes, ice fishing. And people ask me, why do you use a tube? What pattern does it look like? Why would they eat that? It doesn't look like anything. I got a video later on that I'm gonna show you. You see a tube, it's suspended, it's going down. A tube like this in the water will look like a puked up herring. If a lake trout eats a herring, sometimes she'll puke it up, she'll chew half of it, the other part goes down. That's exactly what a tube does. I fish it suspended in the water column, I don't touch it. I'll go touch bottom once in a while, but I'll bring it up. Most of the time, those fish will come up when that tube is not moving. And your timing has to be right. We'll go through some slides. I got some fish finder, screenshot, and explain that to you guys. And of course, I got the swim bait. White and chartreuse swim bait was a staple last year, like this. I'll pass it around if you guys want to check it out. There's 4.5, 5 inches, but a staple color out there is white. They really like white. For me, I think, although the bait is swimming away, it looks like a puked up bait. They go crazy for that. If you're in the summer, you go fishing with dead bait or live bait and you take the skin off a minnow and you put it in front of a bass, they go crazy. They eat it right away. There's something about regurgitated fish. They go crazy for that. That's why the tube and the swim baits work really well. Oh, we're on the video part here. I'll show you this video here. You can see the tube. I'm sure most of you have seen this video. It's gonna play here. Oh, it's loud. So you see the tube, it's going down slowly. We can't really see with the quality of video here, but you'll see. I'm just leaving it there, swimming on its own. The lake trout just comes in. That's in 25 feet of water. And there was another fish with it that you don't see here.
Is that how it works?
Put it back up there. You know, that fish just comes straight at it. And those lake trout, if you're suspending your bait or you're yo-yoing your bait in the water column, it's like a dog. If there's a loose dog in the street and he's seeing you, if you start running away, what's the dog doing? Chasing you right away. Instinct. Instinct. If he sees a squirrel running, that's just his instinct to run after it. Those lake trout, it's the same thing. If something swims away from them, they got to chase it. It's an instinct. That bait's trying to get away, they're going to eat it. Your timing has to be critical. Again, let's say I'm in 120 feet of water. I'm in my bait's at 60, and I see a chaser or a riser coming up, you know, at 80 feet. I mark it. I don't leave my bait there. I have to start moving it quickly. And the biggest mistake I see out there when I guide, or I see people on video, they send me videos, is they jerk their bait. And then the bait falls back down, and then they start reeling. That's the biggest mistake I can see. If you're having a chaser following you, be steady and go faster. Don't jerk it. Go away slowly, faster, entice them to follow you. If it jerks them, for them it's unnatural and they key off of it. I'll get a lot of guys, hey, I got like 8 chasers today, but I got no takers. So just be steady, reel on, don't jerk it, bring it on, and as it gets closer, you gotta go faster. This gets a bit tricky when you're in 25 feet of water like this. Your reaction time is a split second. You're using a fish finder, and your reaction time is your eyes have to be on the fish finder. You gotta know your fish finder. You gotta have it set up to the right sensitivity so that fish, when it comes into the cone, it's marked. You gotta move your bait away. Again, you can't just pick up the rod and move it away. That fish, I was lucky enough to put a camera down the hole. We were on some fish, and that fish just came through. What you don't see, there's a fish on bottom that came with it. When you mark 2 fish on the screen, they get really competitive. They're like, oh, you know, I gotta eat or he's gonna eat. They don't know next time they're gonna have a chance to eat. It's not like me, hey, Big Mac, no pickles. I eat when I want. These fish, they're opportunistic. They're survival of the fittest. Gear, tackle, and setup. That's where I'll welcome some questions. What I'm using rods. I prefer longer rods. If you're catching a lot of fish, you know, it helps you, your arm doesn't get tired, and the hook set. I got more leverage into them. Another thing I like to do is when you catch them in shallow water, they tend to run sideways instead of down. With the longer rod, you can put your rod down the hole so your line's not scrubbing on the side of the ice. That's a 50-inch Wright and McGill. They have them at Cabela's. I think the bait bucket was carrying him. I got one rod over there. It's a really good rod. The only problem with this is if your hut's not big enough, when you're going to get a fish, you're going to set the hook and it's going to touch your hut. So Steve had some problem with that last year. He bought a bigger hut. He's not going to have that issue. I like long rods. That's the shortest rod I use here. That's just a Berkeley Amp Ice rod. It's like $15. They're wicked rods. That's the exact rod setup that I caught that burbot on. I'll pass it around. You guys can check it out. It's nothing secret or special about this. Watch out, there's some hooks on here. Anybody's got a question about gear, tackle, or setup? So how much leader do I put on my reel? I was asked that question a bit earlier. So in bass fishing and lake trout fishing, the leader, once I'm fighting a fish, there you go. Once I'm fighting a fish, the fish is at the hole, I'm about here, I like to have at least 2 or 3 turn in my spool. Like this, the knot, because I use braid. 10-pound braid, 10-pound fluoro. So I like to have my knot in the spool. There's no stress on the knot, because that's your weakest link. It doesn't matter how good your knot is, that's your weakest link when you're joining 2 line. So I like to have the knot in the spool, so about 10 feet usually. 10 feet, the longer the better. You got braid, right? If you can get away in using straight fluorocarbon, by all means, it's expensive, you don't have as much leverage on the fish. Those fish have really strong jaws. So that's what I use, about 10 feet, fluorocarbon, 10-pound, sunline. The main line I use, it's a Power Pro, 10-pound. The whole spool, baby. The whole spool, man. You gotta have the whole spool. They'll spool you out. I got a video I'll show you on here. I hooked one, but I hooked it on the side. So a lake trout, when you catch them, and they have their mouth open because the bait's in there, they can swim, but they're not as aerodynamic, so they can't swim as fast. If you hook one on the side and she's got her mouth closed, better have 150 yards of the line on there, because she'll spool you out. And that's $20 a line, plus a big fish. They'll spool you out.
What about scent? I'm a smoker.
Yep, scent. So he's a smoker, he's asking about scent. I'm a big believer in scent, and I'll tell you why. What's your name? Just Raphael, come up here and choose a prize. Come right on stage and pick one pack you want. What about scent? I'm a big believer in scent. Do I believe it attracts the fish? No. But if you have a day out there and you're getting short strike, you're like, I'm not getting it. Put scent on, they're gonna hold on longer.
Is there like, you're kind of still matching what?
Yeah. Pick anything you want up here. No, not the fish finder, baby. No. Anything you want. There's Freedom tackles, set the hook up here. Anything you want. So scent is really good, especially if you're using a hard bait like I'm passing around. I use a lot of scent. And Peter from Set the Hook, he has them here. He calls them herring balm. It's from herring. So the minute they have it in their mouth, they keep it closed. They know it's a herring. Come grab yourself a pack here. One more question about gear and setup. Okay, so we'll go in depth, and that's a good question. He's asking me how often do I change my hooks on, let's say, the lipless, the hard bait. That's a bait that's fished out there, but not as much as the swim baits and the tubes and the soft plastic. But the Duos Realis, it's made in Japan. I've been with them for 2 years. They support me really well. And last year, I would say I caught 75% of my fish on that bait right there. I've never changed a hook. They got wicked saltwater hooks on there. They're very thin. I've had them break because I'm too rough with my needle nose pliers. But you definitely want to keep them sharp. You know, those lake trout, they have like a dog jaw. If you hook them where it's not cartilage, actually bone, you got to hook them in the skin. So no matter what I'm fishing out there, it has a treble hook. If you look at that swim bait, we can pass it around. There's a treble hook on it, a stinger hook that I put on bottom. That I'll tie it myself. You guys can pass this around. It's on a Freedom Stealth, so from Freedom Tackle, it's a stealth head. It helps the swim bait swim straight. If you have a swim bait out there in 120 feet of water, you look it down and it just goes in circle. I mean, that looks like an helicopter to me. Doesn't look like a herring. A herring's gonna swim straight down. I'm really picky about this. It's one of the main reasons why I run Freedom Tackle, is I want my swim bait to swim straight down, not twirl up. Same on the way up. So on this, I got a treble hook. You know, it's a bit rusted from last season. So I put it under, and I would say, oh, pass it around. I would say that's how every swim bait should be fished. And I would say over 80% of those fish come just on the stinger hook. I see guys out there fishing with just a straight shank hook. Yeah, it's great, but they lose a lot of fish.
Are you direct tying everything, or are you running swivels or snap swivels?
Okay. So he's asking me if I'm running a swivel or a snap swivel. If I'm fishing deep, I go in Kempen Felt, 80 feet or more, 60 feet or more. You gotta have a swivel or you're gonna get line twist. No matter what, you're jigging all day. You know, you're going like that, especially when you're jigging, they're gonna spin a little bit. So I'll have a snap swivel. This one has a snap swivel, so on my swim bait in the tube, when I fish deep, swivel for sure, and a snap swivel, yeah. I can change my bait real quick. He's asking me about live bait, and I would say in the fishing industry, the weekend fishermen, they're all about live bait, and live bait does work. Last year, I kept bugging Steve, who was here before me. I said, Steve, man, we got to catch one on a tip-up. It was going to remind me when I was a kid. I watched a flag go up and come and get it. We went out for 2 weeks setting up tip-ups, and we caught nothing. And it's probably because we don't know how to do it properly, right? Live bait does work. Nothing beats live bait. If you go out there with leeches in the summer, you're going to catch them. If you go with minnows in the winter, you have to be on the right fish. I think that the mistake with live bait is a lot of people put them on bottom. If you're fishing deep, put it up. They're feeding up, they're not looking down. If you're fishing by a shoal, they'll look down. One more question, yep? Pardon me?
What's your maximum length of line on the spool if you're going, ground or whatever you call it, ground fishing?
She's asking me how much line I put on my spool. We've mentioned it a bit earlier. I put the whole spool, 150 yards. Yeah, that's what will go on those reels. Those are like 1500 series reel. It's a bit big for ice fishing, but it's perfect. And you gotta have smooth drags. You know, I don't have a favorite brand of reels, but your drag has to be right because those lake trout, you know, sometimes she'll dug up and she'll go side to side, and when she starts running, you gotta have smooth drag because when she starts running, if your drag's too tight, she's gonna snap you off. I only fish with light line, 10-10. I think they see everything, right? Any more question about my fish finder, my tackle, what's my favorite bait, anything?
For your sonar, when you're looking at it, can you tell the difference between a laker and a whitefish on your like,
So that's a good question. So he's asking me about my fish finder. I use a fish finder. I don't use a flasher. I've always fished with a fish finder because I like the history, and people think I'm stupid for that. I like seeing the history because your fish finder goes from right to left. 30 seconds later, when that fish is gone, you can still see his pattern, where he came through the water column, where I can adjust my bait with a flasher, I would be lost. Can you tell if it's a lake trout or a whitefish? If I'm deep, yeah. The whitefish tend to show up deep, close to the bottom, and they'll have 2-3 with them. A lake trout tend to come up, 20 feet off bottom, out of nowhere. We're gonna show here. We're gonna go through this a bit earlier. So you can see this is a lake trout. Came way up, all the way to 64 feet of water, over 122 feet of water. A whitefish not gonna shoot up like this. And what happened here is I was with my buddy Aaron, I fish a lot with. We had 2 lines down there yo-yoing. Lake trout passed his line. I don't remember what we were using. Passed his line, probably went for his bait, and tried to hit my bait twice. Or his bait twice, you can see, and then it got confused. Sometimes they play with it. They're animals. Your dog plays with a branch outside. They're fish. They'll do the same thing. Sometimes they toy with them. Sometimes they're like, they're short striking me. They're just hitting them with their tail. A lake trout, when it's chasing your bait, it doesn't swim in a straight line. Almost like a dolphin. Look, put your head down the hole and look. They'll come up like this. It's very spooky when you see this. It gives me the shiver when I see them chase like that. They play with them. So what happened here is we confused the trout, I think. 2 baits, they're like, she doesn't know what to get, and she left right away. Here's, again, 2 line. There was a line active on the left side. You can tell he went on bottom. That trout was like, I don't want that bait. I want the bait at top, dead sticking. That bait wasn't even moving, and she passed it. Dead sticking, they're feeding up. Those fish that they're chasing, they're trying to push them on the ice.
So let's say you have a follower,
Yeah.
and then it starts to go down. Do you follow it down, or do you keep reeling?
Okay, so if I get a follower and she starts going down, for sure I'm chasing her. I'm trying to get her going. I've had, and especially the big trout. The big trout will show up suspended, and you'll have to yo-yo them, playing with them, trying to get her going. You know, with a swim bait or a tube. Oh, no, well, I'll follow her, meaning I'll play with her and try to get her pissed off, right? Because sometimes you just got to tick her off. So you can see that one went straight down. I went back down it. That's why I like the Freedom stuff, the 1 ounce. I follow her right down. And last year, a lot of the fish I caught came when I went down with them, with the lipless. And what you got to do is you got to pay attention to your fish finder and to your line. Your line's coming off your spool, and then all of a sudden it stops. But you're 60 feet above bottom. Why does it stop? Because she's got it in her mouth. It's really tough to get them going down. But once you pay attention to all those details, your fish finder, oh, she stopped. My bait didn't stop. Reel up. And if you got scent, she'll hold on to that bait. If you don't, you know, I really like Peter Savoya from Set the Hook. He makes that herring balm. It doesn't stick to your hand. And the smell, it's not that bad compared to other scent, but they hold on to that, especially for bass too. I got lots of questions here, guys.
So in that scenario where you had a rise and it went back down and you're chasing it, if she doesn't pick it up on the fall, do you go past her or do you stop above her and jerk it and try and get her to re-engage?
It's all about reading what the fish finder does. You know, like I said, sometimes you can play with that fish 5 minutes. She'll stick around, she'll leave, and I know it's the same fish coming back. You got to play with her and present her a different way. Most of the time, I try to pass her. Again, I want her to chase me. That's how they eat. The lake trout that live in Kempenfeld, you know, shouldn't call them juveniles, but the 8-pounders, they're all shorter and choked full of herring. Those fish, that's all they eat. They eat suspended fish. They try to chase them up and down. They try to get a fish off the school, and they'll chase it, and they'll eat it. So, yeah, sometimes you got to play with it. Yeah, I'll try to pass it for sure on the way down. Man, you're asking me about burbot. He's asking me if what depth I should go. I'm going to be right honest with you. I have no clue. I got lucky with that one. I got lucky. And me and Steve read up on it. We caught that burbot. I called Will Wagman. I said, I think I got the record. What do I do? Then there's a lot to do, which is, thank you. There's a lot to do, which is scary. I think guys will catch a record and put him back in the water because they don't know what to do. Luckily, I got a friend like Will Wagman, hooked me up with the right details, what we needed to do. The biggest thing for us was to find a government certified scale. Where do you find a government certified scale? Does anybody know? Post office, yeah. They'll look at you funny because trust me, we did that. The lady's like, sure. I said, I'll clean your bucket. And there's a group of people that gathered around us. They were like, they're weighing a fish at Chopper's Drug Mart. And it was in kilos. I got 5 minutes left, guys. So, you know, read up on it. The OFH is here. They'll tell you what you need to do. It takes a year to certify your record. If somebody catches one before December 31st or the January 1st, they'll have the new pending record if they send it in. And that record is going to get beat. But yeah, burbot, man, Will would be the guy to ask. Where I fished them is on the deeper side of the shoal. I think they like to be in the crevices. A lot of guys are successful with live bait. We've tried. Me and Steve went back at night the same night. Oh, well, we're going to go crush them. Let's go. And we only caught one. Through the season, I caught him during the day at 12 o'clock. It was sunny outside on top of a shoal. I think they're just making a reappearance. But you got to be around shoal for sure. Structure. I think they're like catfish. They like structure and dig down the mud. Let's go through to the next slide, just see what I got here, because I kind of forgot. Fishing community grounds. You people are like, oh, Sebastian, I see your videos, you're never around anybody. No, I don't want to be around anybody, because those fish, when you got 50 huts like this, they know. They know the brand of hooks you're using, they know the gobies are the circles, the perch, or the triangle, the herring, or the X's. You can see this, you know, if I want to go catch fish, lake trout that are shallow lake trout, well, I'm going to go check where the gobies are and the perch. It's not, if the lake trouts are there, they're there because there's food. They're not there just to chill. Those fish are there to eat. They swim all the time. They don't stop. They got to eat. So fish where there's bait. You know there's bait. Imitate that bait and get that pattern going. For me, it's all about a pattern. When I go fishing, I got a pattern in my head that I think they'll eat lake herring. And I try to imitate that herring. So I'll have a swim bait. I'll have my lipless on my tube. Another question I get a lot is, you go deep or shallow? First ice, I go to the deepest spot I can go. 115 feet, 120 feet, and then I make my way in. Why? If you set up in the middle and you don't catch nothing, you're like, where do you go next? You go deep or you go shallow? Just go deep right away, and then make your way shallow. You know, work smartly. One more question? What replaces? So she's asking me about Falcor. We named it Falcor. My name is Sebastian. You know, I write the Falcor. They called it Falcor. They don't make it anymore, so I asked Peter from Set the Hook to make me some white tubes. He has them through North. Outfitter has them. That's what replaces it, and I like it because it's a bit smaller, so that I've caught a lot of whitefish on this. This one, I'm kind of stuck just catching lake trout on this. This one, I've caught I caught more whitefish than lake trout on this. You know, it's Canadian made too. I like representing Canadian companies. I think it's good that we market our company. I want to thank Freedom Tackle, Set the Hook, and Duos Realis. I don't call myself a pro staff. These guys are supporting me, and I'm supporting them. That's all it is. We'll take a couple more questions. I got some more prizes. 2 best questions are going to grab some prize. So he's asking me when I'm going for burbot, and I'm going to include lake trout and whitefish because I'll fish the same way. He's asking me if I run and gun. If I set up in the morning, do I stay there? No, I go. I better be marking fish or I leave. I'm not fishing dead water. If you're not marking nothing, leave. And Steve mentioned moon phases. If the moon phase is off, you'll still be marking fish. They'll come up suspended, not be interested. But if you're there when the moon phase is kicked in, it's going to be a gong show. They're going to eat. And the moon phases dictate what the bait fish are doing. That's what turns the lake trout on. Right? So come grab a prize. You had a question, I'm sorry. Yeah. So you know that when you buy a box of brand new shoes, it comes with that little pack that smells funny. You can buy them on Amazon. There's a link. It's like $7 for 50 of them. Stuff that into your tackle box, man. The 3700 trays, that's all I do, and it still get rusted a little bit, but it sucks the moisture out. Because in the winter, you get all that snow coming in, and yeah, this really helps. So you're gonna save a lot of money doing that. It's $7 for 50, right? Come grab your prize. Couple more questions.
We were talking about end of season with the whitefish, but now the season's just getting started now. So when the ice finally freezes over, what kind of tactics do you recommend for going out there? You know, aggressive, more passive, short, go straight as far out as possible. What are your tactics getting out in the beginning of the season?
So he's asking me early season. What I'm going to tell you, January 1st, God bless if there's ice, I'm going deep. I believe that Lake Simcoe has 2 different kinds of lake trout. There's the old giants that like to roam around shoal year round, and there's I call them juveniles, who should call them juvenile, they're 8-pounders. I think those fish, they're after year around. So I go after the chasers. I like to go deep, and I like to chase. It's fun, you know, you get them going. It's like a live video game. So I'm going to go deep. I'm going to have my swim bait set up right away. That's my setup, and I'll go as deep as I can, and I'll make my way towards shore. Sometimes I don't have to go anywhere. But you got to be on fish. If you're not marking stuff, you're not getting reaction to nothing, leave. Leave.
So swim bait's more active type product.
Swim baits for sure. That is first thing I'm dropping through the water is that swim bait, right there. And I'll catch fish on it. I like to get the herring chasers, those lake trout that chase bait. Come grab your prize.
Hanging a lure halfway down the water column. You
Oh, you mean the swim bait? The swim bait most likely going to rest like this. The important part is gauging, and that's very tricky. I think once you, I think once you, see right here, we both reacted too late to that fish coming up. That fish was streaking hard. If once you gauge the distance you need to be moving your bait from the fish is what's going to trigger them. If you wait too long, she's going to play with it. You'll be like, oh, you're not even running away from me. As soon as they come off and I don't jerk my rod, I bring it back up, steady. As she gets closer, I reel it away. Sometimes it's right at the hole. It's like, woo. Come grab your price. How much time I got left, Will? Whoa. How much time do I got? Yeah, pull the lever. Put me down. Couple more questions, guys. So he's asking me if I fish with 1 rod or 2 rods. We're allowed 2 rods ice fishing. If I'm deep, 60 feet or deeper, 1 rod. Simply because the chance that I catch one, she's gonna tangle my other rod, man. It's a mess. Sometimes I do it, but I hate when it gets tangled. It's costing you money. Like, it's 20 bucks a spool. Gets all wrecked up, and then I fish 1 rod. 1 rod. If I go shallow, I'll have 2 rods. In fact, it's shallow enough I can, if I'm dead sticking that bait, I can move it away. Come grab a price. A couple more prices here, guys. So something comparable to a fish finder. There's flashers, they're a bit cheaper, they come rigged. This is custom rigged. No, I bought the case like this, come up here and get it. This is custom rig, I try to save some money on here. Flashers are great. Entry level flashers are cheap, fish finders, $200. Radio World has some. I like Humminbird, I'm a big Humminbird guy. Humminbird doesn't give me nothing. It's what I've grinded my teeth on, and I got a lot of videos out there how to set them up. So small fish finder, $200. And for the people who go out there fishing without a fish finder, my respect to you, because I got to know if there's fish down there. I want to be marking stuff. For me, it's a video game. I'm a young guy. You can come grab your prize. A couple more questions. Yep. That's a good question. So he's asking me what's the biggest lake trout I've ever caught. I have never weighed the fish, because a fish that big, when you try to hook them, unless you get the grippers, which I got now, you're going to hurt them, you're going to damage them. My guess is probably around 20 pounds. I've had clients catch 25 pounds with me. That's a big fish for Lake Simcoe. But the average size out there is 8 pounds. I've caught plenty of 18, 19, 20, maybe 21 pounds. I don't weigh them. I measure them now. I'm going to weigh them this year because I can weigh them properly. When you weigh a fish on a scale and it's got the hook, and the fish weighs 20 pounds, you're going to tear his jaw. I'd rather preserve the fish and go make babies so I can catch them later. Come grab your prize. One more question. Are we good?
But you get a fish from like 100 feet deep, but you release how can we make sure it will survive because of the pressure difference, right?
So that's a very good question. I'm happy you asked that question. So when you catch a fish deep, and deep for me is 60 feet, but realistically for a fish, deep is 25 feet and below. They're like us. If you go in 100 feet of water and you come swim right back up, you're going to die. The oxygen that got compressed down at the bottom, once it gets up, it wants to expand. So same thing happens to the fish. When you catch a lake trout, they're able to burp themselves. But you got to take your time, bring them back up. Once you see those bubbles, usually she's done fighting. She'll go back down. If the bubbles don't come out and you get her out of the water, she won't come back down. Just press on the belly a little bit. She'll burp a little bit. When you get them out of the water, you hear them. The whitefish, they're a bit more finicky. You got to take your time. Reel them up slowly. If you plan on releasing it, reel him up slow. If you catch him in 70 feet of water, don't rush him, because he's going to get the bends and he's going to have a hard time swimming back down. So once you hook a whitefish, plus they got soft lips, you want to take your time. They don't run or anything. That's it, guys. I thank you very much. Tomorrow at 4 o'clock, I think.
All right, Sebastian. Thank you. Holy jeez, was that good or what? Okay. So